our Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Zahra Syed. Our top story tonight. A U.S. court has held a hearing on a case accusing President Joe Biden, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin of complicity in Israel's alleged genocide in Gaza. The hearing at the District Court for the Northern District of California took place shortly after the International Court of Justice's ruling last Friday. That ordered Israel to take measures to prevent further bloodshed in Gaza, but it did not mandate an immediate ceasefire. Human rights organizations and Palestinian plaintiffs in the U.S. demanded an emergency injunction to halt U.S. support for Israel's bombardment of Gaza. Israeli strikes have killed more than 26,000 Palestinians and left 2 million on the brink of starvation. Plaintiffs argue that the U.S. is violating domestic and international law, including the Genocide Convention. Despite mounting evidence of ethnic cleansing, the Biden administration has continued to support Israel. Fears of a widening conflict in the Middle East have intensified, as Syrian state media confirmed that Israeli airstrikes south of Damascus killed Iranian advisors and civilians. The attack near Sayyida Zainab Shrine Complex prompted a rare acknowledgement of Iranian casualties by Damascus. Earlier, 3 U.S. military personnel were killed and dozens wounded in a drone attack near the Syrian border in Jordan. It's the first time U.S. troops have been killed in near-daily rocket and drone attacks on bases in Iraq and Syria, raising concerns about potential U.S. involvement. These attacks have resumed since Israel's latest war on Palestine began in October. The most recent strike targeted facilities used by U.S. troops at Tower 22. Militias backed by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps had claimed responsibility, vowing further escalation. The situation remains volatile as the U.S. reviews its Syria policy and troop presence in the region. U.S. President Joe Biden has pledged a strong response following a drone attack attributed to Iranian proxy groups. On Sunday, Biden expressed his condolences and assured the U.S. would retaliate. The Pentagon declined to provide precise details, but confirmed further information would be shared as it became available. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin emphasized that the U.S. will not tolerate attacks on American forces and will take necessary actions to protect U.S. interests.
I want to point out that we had a tough day last night in the Middle East. We lost 3 brave souls in an attack on one of our bases.
Yes.
And I'd ask you for a moment of silence for all 3 of those fallen souls.
Jesus.
And we shall respond.
Demonstrators gathered outside the home of Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Virginia, demanding a ceasefire in Gaza. Carrying Palestinian flags and displaying banners accusing the U.S. of complicity in Israeli war crimes, they voiced outrage over the ongoing conflict. Activist Hazami Barmada asserted that the U.S. shares responsibility for supporting Israel's actions, which she labeled war crimes, genocide, and human rights violations. Protesters vowed to continue their presence to pressure Blinken and demand an end to U.S. support for Israel's actions. A Jewish American protester criticized politicians for not calling for a Gaza ceasefire or an end to military aid to Israel. The International Court of Justice last week ordered Israel to take measures to prevent further bloodshed in Gaza, but it did not mandate an immediate ceasefire. South Africa brought the genocide case against Israel to the UN court, urging emergency measures to halt the violence in Gaza.
We just know that we have to put a lot of pressure on Blinken and on every politician. They've not been calling for a ceasefire. They've not been calling for an end to U.S. aid to Israel, for military aid. They've not been calling for an end of the siege on Gaza or an end of the occupation. So, the very least they can call for is a ceasefire and to stop the genocidal practices going on by the Israeli military against Palestinians right now.
We believe firmly that the United States is not only complicit but is responsible for supporting Israel in doing war crimes and genocide and crimes against humanity, violations of human rights law and international law. So we are here as American citizens. We've been camping since Friday morning. We will be camping through this entire weekend and into next week to let him know that we are not okay with American taxpayer money being used to commit crimes, to kill 13,000 innocent children, to kill over 30,000 innocent civilians, to make children orphans orphaned, amputees, to terrorize people, to make over 90% of Gaza's population homeless. We are going to continue to put pressure up every time he drives in and out, his family drives in and out. We've seen his wife and children drive in and out. They are not only reminded of what they're doing, but they're also reminded that we are going to continue to keep up the pressure, demand a ceasefire, and demand an end to the U.S. support of Israel's war crimes.
The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called on the U.S., UK, and other countries to reconsider their decision to suspend funding for the UN Relief and Works Agency in Gaza, or the UNRWA. Guterres emphasized the critical needs of the people of Gaza and urged these governments to ensure continuity of the UNRWA's operations despite allegations against some of its employees. Acknowledging the seriousness of the allegations, Guterres stressed the humanitarian workers at UNRWA should not be penalized for the alleged actions of a few. The UNRWA has terminated contracts with several employees accused of involvement in attacks on Israelis. The US, the UK, Italy, Australia, Canada, Finland, and the Netherlands suspended funding following claims made by Israel. However, Norway and Ireland have chosen to continue their support for the UNRWA. Guterres has stressed that an investigation into the allegations is underway, with swift action being taken against accused individuals. He also notes that any UN employee involved in terrorism will face accountability. Guterres says the World Court has ordered Israel to prevent acts of genocide in Gaza, where thousands of Palestinians have been killed and infrastructure severely damaged. Jews hold religious ritual at gates of the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. Details come after the break. Stay tuned and we will be right back. Welcome back. Extremist Jewish groups held a religious ritual at the historical gates of the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Israeli-occupied East Jerusalem on Saturday. Under the protection of Israeli forces, they performed rituals near the Cotton Merchants Gate, Iron Gate, and King Faisal gates. Their voices disturbed prayers inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Tensions have been running high across the region in recent months due to Israel's attacks on Gaza. At least 165 Palestinians have been killed and 290 others injured in Gaza since Saturday as Israel continues its onslaught. The Palestinian Health Ministry has said the Israeli occupation committed 19 massacres against families in Gaza, leaving 165 martyrs and 290 injured. Many people still are trapped under rubble as rescuers are unable to reach them. The situation escalated in the central Gaza's Nuseirat refugee camp, with 33 casualties reported due to Israeli shelling. Israeli forces shelled a UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees school in the El Rimmel neighborhood, housing displaced people and killing 10. 3 more people near a hospital were killed and 4 others injured while attempting to move a deceased woman. The hospital is surrounded by tanks, displacing those seeking refuge. Israel's offensive in the city of Khan Yunis persists, forcing more Palestinians into the overcrowded Rafah city. Meanwhile, in the city of Dura in the West Bank, 2 people were killed and 2 others injured as Israeli forces stormed the town. Israel has also ordered residents of specific Gaza city areas to evacuate. Since October 7th, the death toll stands at 26,422 Palestinians killed and 65,087 injured, with 1,139 casualties in Israel from Hamas's attacks on the same date. Despite the International Court of Justice's provisional rulings last Friday, Israel has continued its offensive on Gaza. Israel has killed at least 26,422 Palestinians, mostly women and children, and injured 65,087 since October 7th. The Israeli offensive has left 85% of Gaza's population internally displaced amid acute shortages of food, clean water, and medicine. About 60% of the enclave's infrastructure has been damaged or destroyed, according to the UN. A group of 25 historians specializing in the Civil War and Reconstruction have filed a brief with the U.S. Supreme Court backing Colorado's efforts to prevent Donald Trump from appearing on the ballot. They are citing the 14th Amendment, which prohibits insurrectionists from running for office. The historians argue the 14th Amendment's historical context and wording demonstrates that it applies to the president. It serves as a check against insurrectionists without requiring additional congressional action, they said. Trump's legal team contends the president is not covered by the 14th Amendment. Only Congress can disqualify candidates, and that Trump did not incite insurrection. The former president has been impeached twice, with the second impeachment related to his alleged incitement of the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack. Like Colorado, Maine has also sought to remove Trump from its ballot, with a ruling pending in the Supreme Court. Oral arguments are set for February 8th. Amicus briefs allow interested parties to make relevant arguments. Earlier this month, nearly 180 Republicans joined a brief in support of Trump. Thousands of women shut down the streets of Kenya's capital, Nairobi, in a protest against the escalating femicide crisis. Dressed in white t-shirts bearing the message, "Stop Killing Us," demonstrators known as the Feminist March Against Femicide demanded justice and an end to brutal attacks on women. Signs with messages such as "She was someone, not just a statistic," underscored the gravity of the issue. Esther Peseres, a representative of the Nairobi Women NGO, urged President William Ruto to take a stand against femicide, emphasizing the need for national unity. The protest was ignited by a series of gruesome murders in the past month, with 7 women killed. The Kenyan government has condemned these cases and vowed to take action. Simultaneous protests also swept through various towns across Kenya in a collective call for change. More than a dozen Rohingya Muslims were killed in Burmese army artillery attacks in the country's western Rakhine state. Rone Sanluin, co-founder of Free Rohingya Coalition, an umbrella network of Rohingya refugees, says the military recently targeted the community in Honeo Lake Village of Butidong Township. He added fighting between the Arakan army and the Burmese military has resulted in several Rohingya casualties. In 2017, a mass exodus of Rohingya people was provoked by the Burmese military's brutal genocide on the Muslim minority in the country. Since then, roughly 1.2 million Rohingya fled to neighboring Bangladesh, living in squalid conditions at the world's largest refugee camp in the city of Cox's Bazar. Afghanistan's ruling Taliban has announced plans to grant high school diplomas and university degrees to graduates of Islamic seminaries or madrasahs. Critics accuse the Taliban of placing unqualified fighters and clerics in key government positions, contributing to a dire humanitarian and economic crisis. The move is seen as an attempt to consolidate power and establish a Taliban-dominated government. Many Western-banked civil servants have been forced to adhere to Islamic law or undergo knowledge tests. Since the Taliban's resurgence over 2 years ago, they have transformed secular institutions into madrasahs, leading to mass layoffs of educators and a ban on female education. The Ministry of Higher Education's recent decision to grant formal qualifications to madrasah graduates is part of the regime's strategy to evolve from insurgents to a functioning government. In nearby India and Pakistan, madrasah certificates are recognized for admission in the undergraduate and postgraduate programs of universities. Under the previous Afghan government, madrasas often were informal and offered religious instruction to children in mainly poor communities. Lexington, Mississippi's local police department, is facing multiple lawsuits from residents who claim unjust targeting and arrests. A recent one filed by Mississippi-based civil rights organization Julian alleges the police department has subjected Black residents to years of harassment and abuse. The Department of Justice initiated a pattern or practice investigation in November to examine persistent misconduct or discriminatory practices within the city and its police. The lawsuit implicates former police chief Sam Dobbins, who previously made racist comments, as well as Mayor Robin McCrory, accusing them of complicity. It also blames current police chief Charles Henderson for lewd remarks and fostering discriminatory behavior amongst officers. The lawsuit reveals a high number of Black arrests for minor traffic offenses. Pakistan has alleged that India is responsible for recent cross-border assassinations on Pakistani soil. Foreign Secretary Mohammad Cyrus Qazi compared them to cases in the US and Canada, suggesting a global Indian network of extrajudicial killings. He revealed credible evidence linking Indian intelligence to the murders of 2 Pakistanis in September and October of last year. Qazi says they were sophisticated killings for hire with an international network using technology and foreign safe havens. India has denied the allegations, saying they are false and malicious propaganda. U.S. prosecutors recently accused an alleged Indian intelligence officer of plotting an assassination, As well, Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau made similar allegations against Indian agents last year. India says it is investigating the claims made by the U.S. government. That's all from our Toronto studios tonight. We're thrilled to announce a monumental achievement. Our family has just reached 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. Your unwavering support has fueled our journey to this incredible milestone, and we want to express our heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you. We're now setting our sights on the next milestone, 200,000 subscribers on YouTube. Your continued support is crucial in amplifying the reach of Muslim Network TV. Invite your friends, family, and colleagues to join our community. Let's make our voice even stronger. Assalamu alaikum and good night.